we have made it to the end of phase 2. So here we are in a deload week, and I just kind of wanted to throw a few different things in. So I wanted to focus this week on just getting some, of course, active recovery, right? Not just sitting around doing nothing. I'm going to train. And I wanted to work on just some general movement skills. You can see there's a lateral A skip here. And just kind of working on coordination. And again, just moving, right? And just trying to not just be lazy. This is a forward gallop, and or you could call that a forward shuffle, right? A backwards karaoke. And this is just some stuff I mess around with to, like I said, keep coordination. So it's just about moving, kind of getting out of the just the general planes of movement that I'm usually in the weight room, and just trying to get my body moving, and working on some different things. Here we have a shuffle, transition to a sprint. I believe I do a back pedal sprint, and then we have some karaoke curl. So stick your foot in the ground and go. That's a nice little wide receiver drill. And then I get in the in the garage, and I'm going to do similar to my other deload weeks. I'm going to go bench, squat, and then I'm going to work on some Olympic lifting on the third day. But basically I do 2 warm-up sets, and then I do 6 sets at 60% of my training max. So it's actually only 54% of my 1 rep max. But something I do, and I haven't necessarily filmed in the past, especially in this week, is I'm always thinking about mobility and stretching, and I always just think that there should be about a 1-to-1 ratio. For every weight training, higher intensity workout that you do, you should also do one exercise that's more of like a working in or like recovery promoting type workout. So here in this workout, and typically what I do on my deloads as well is I just kind of infuse a bunch of mobility work, stretching, things like that. So I'm warming up. I believe I'm doing some upper body stuff here first, just to get ready for the bench press. And then while I'm bench pressing, I'm doing a bunch of leg stuff. So because the legs really aren't involved, so I'm not too worried about stretching. So I would do like a lot of stretching on the legs, and then do a set of bench, more stretching, legs, bench. And that's what you're going to see here in a minute. So the other thing I love about this deload week is we can talk about the analytics. So let's pull up those analytics. Here you're looking at the hip 90-90, just like I said, working on that full range of motion in the hips, and really just paying attention to if you're feeling any pain or anything like that. Like these types of movements will expose that. Back to the analytics. You know that in phase 1 and phase 2, the whole goal was building volume, accumulating volume. So starting in the first column, we have our average percentage. That's related to our primary lift, which was the first lift we did, the barbell movement. And the percentage here was the same, right? That wasn't the focus of the training program. We were just trying to really maintain strength with that, and you can see that the average percentage was the same in both blocks. The technical volume, again, that technical volume relates to the barbell movements, and you can see again the percentage intensity was the same, and the reps were nearly the same. 1 more rep. Now we get down to the assistance volume. This is really where you see that accumulation occurred. In block 1, we had 84 sets, and then block 2, 108 sets. There was a 30% increase, and that's pretty significant if you look at the difference between blocks 1 and blocks 2. And then that total volume, whereas when we add in the sets from the technical sets of the barbell movements, we went from 135 sets in block 1 to 159 sets in block 2. That was an 18% increase. And one of the reasons I went with sets as a way to measure the volume is because you guys kind of saw in my assistance work how so much of it was, like in block 1 was isometric tempo, and then in block 2 it was eccentric tempo. And when you're doing tempo work, if I was to measure my sets by reps, it wouldn't necessarily tell the complete picture. And that's kind of the issue with quantifying anything anyways, right? You're trying to put a number on something, and you want to make sure that that number is valid, right? Validity being like, is it actually measuring what you want it to measure? So here I'm trying to like get a picture of what the overall volume looked like, and I think that sets was a good way to do that, just because each of my sets was going to be fairly similar in terms of like the intensity or the exertion that I put into it. I would say that most of my sets were probably between it depends, between 70 and 90% effort, regardless of how many reps I was doing. And so I think that sets was really a good way here to kind of get a picture of the amount of work that I was doing. And so again, you can see that there was a 30% increase in the assistance volume, and then a 18% increase in just the overall volume. Now, a general rule of thumb in strength conditioning is like week over week, you never really want to go over like 10%. So that could be related to, say, you were benching like 200 pounds, in this week. Next week, in general, if the reps and the sets were the same, I wouldn't want to go heavier than about 220, right? And that would be a pretty big jump anyways, especially if 200 was like fairly challenging for you. But there's just this 10% rule. And it's the same with volume as well. So in any one week, you wouldn't want to be going over 10% of what you did the week before. And again, that's just a rule of thumb, depending on what you're doing. I mean, if you're doing something that's fairly low risk of injury, like say like a plank or something where you're not loading the spine or something, you can obviously get away with a little bit more and whatnot. And I think that's where you see the assistance volume had a little bit higher increase than the total volume. But honestly, if you look at the assistance volume from blocks 1 to block 2, that's 30%. And if you think about, I was building that volume over 3 weeks. So if you divide that 30% by 3 weeks, it's really dead on, 10% each week. And so I'm pretty pleased with the fact that, I believe blocks 1 and 2 accomplished what I wanted them to accomplish, which is where I really just built the conditioning of my body, right? I put a lot of volume through my body. Now, next phase, we're going to be in a basic strength phase. And essentially what's going to happen is the assistance volume is going to drop drastically. It's going to be, I don't want to say non-existent, but it's going to be a lot less. And the technical volume is going to be increased. So if you were to look at this chart, again, the assistance volume would be less. There'd be less sets there by far. And that's what's going to happen. And then the technical volume will increase. So there's going to be a greater emphasis on barbell movements and less of an emphasis on the volume, right? So volume should go down, intensity should go up. The average intensity rate there at the top, 75%, will go up. I believe it'll be at likely 85%, and you have to remember that these are off of training maxes, but it'll be 85%. So again, think about that 10% rule as well. Hopping into the next set, we're bumping up 10%, no more. And again, technical volume will go up. Assistance volume will go down. So the overall volume will be less, but the intensity will be quite a bit higher. So let's get back to the idea of accumulation or work capacity. So the idea with a phase like that is that obviously the weight is less, but you're doing more reps. Whereas in a basic strength phase, again, intensity is greater, but you're doing fewer reps. So even though you're actually lifting heavier weights, let's say you're doing like 4 sets of 5 at 200 pounds. So 200 times 5 is 1,000, and you're doing 4 sets. So your overall load volume for that session was 4,000 pounds of, let's just call it squat, right? 4,000 pounds. And say you do no assistance work. Well, in that work capacity phase where you were really trying to prepare your body and lay that foundation for the strength phase, maybe you never actually went as heavy as 200 pounds, but if you were to actually add up all the volume and the load volume, which is where you just basically, you count for each rep you do, you count that weight and you keep adding it up. Let's say for each session, your load volume would have actually been higher than it will be on the basic strength. And that's why that work capacity phase really builds a nice foundation for the basic strength, because even though you're trading that intensity, and you're increasing the intensity by increasing the load on the barbell, but your body has been accustomed or it's been prepared for being able to do all of that work. But that's where it's just smart, and it's just a basic principle of exercise where as you increase that intensity, you would not want to keep your volume super high either. So it's like you want to focus on one training goal at one time, and that's kind of like a characteristic of block periodization, where you're kind of focused on one thing at one time, and you're just kind of going all in on that. So as we get into next week's episode 10, can you believe it? We've come this far, right? 10 weeks goes by really fast when you're having a blast. And this is what I try to tell people too, like people who are not super into exercise, man. I swear the programs just fly by every time. Look where we are already. We already went through 2 phases of a modified 5-3-1, and now we're ready to hop into the 2 phases that I'm really excited about. In phase 3, a basic strength phase, and then we'll move into phase 4, which will be a max strength phase, where at the end of the 16-week program, I'm going to max out on my back squat and on my military press. So that's it. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate the support from all the homies, and be on the lookout for a new episode, typically on Fridays, but life happens. So thanks, y'all.